Welcome, everyone. It is so heartening to see you in these horrible times that we're living in. I'm Nandita Sharma. I'm with an organization called Hawaii J20 that is organizing this event. I'm also a professor of sociology at UH Mãnoa. So before we get started, I just have a few thank yous that are in order. And the first and foremost is for this wonderful place that we're in. So thank you to Harris Methodist United Church. They have been so supportive of community efforts to protect migrants, to work for justice, and we really appreciate them. I also want to thank all the volunteers with Hawaii J20, because it's definitely not just me. So if those of you who are with Hawaii J20, if you could stand up and wave your hands. Thank you, everyone. And a big thank you to our co-sponsor for tonight, which is the Indivisible Hawaii Statewide Network. So thank you. And thank you, all of you, because nothing's going to happen without all of you. So the first person I'd like to introduce is Nicole Wu, who is a member of the Harris United Methodist Church Sanctuary Ministry. So Nicole's here to welcome us to this place.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Harris United Methodist Church has a long history of supporting social justice and our immigrant neighbors. We actually started our sanctuary ministry team in 2017 in response to the first Trump administration. So we've been supporting immigrants in sort of physical ways, providing plane tickets for neighbor island ones who need to come here for their immigration hearings, lodging, sometimes in our church apartment, or we'll even put them up in a hotel so they can get to their early morning ICE appointments on time. We just set up a kokua closet here on campus. If a pro bono attorney or other social service provider has a client who needs things like clothes, personal toiletries, we have some gift cards. Auntie Wally's here. Did I miss anything? That kind of stuff? Yeah, so upon referral, they can call our church office and we can open up the closet and provide those sort of necessities for immigrant neighbors who might have, might need that kind of stuff because they are not working or something like that. We also have these Know Your Rights cards on the registration table in 19 different languages. So please take some if you know people who need to know their rights. And finally, we'd like to start setting up more mutual aid like the Kokua Closet. So I'm going to make a form in the back. If anyone's interested in helping us with things like, bringing groceries to people who are afraid to leave their house, with more of these rides to and from the airport, that kind of stuff. I'll have a sign-up sheet, and we're still trying to figure it out, but I'll get to you eventually. And we're just so happy to host important events like this one, because as I said, this is the history of our church. We are a social justice-oriented church, so please get started.
So tonight's event is really to get all of us together to mobilize, to get our legislators into action to protect migrants. That's what we're here for tonight. And so before we start with our three wonderful speakers who are all grassroots folks working in the community with very direct experience of how ICE has intensified here over the past year, I want to introduce someone who has come to every single one of our Solidarity Series public forums, not as a speaker, not as someone that we especially invited, but I remember at our very first event, shortly after Trump was elected, someone said, "Oh, Representative Bellotti is here." It's like, "Oh, really? Okay." And then she just kept coming and staying. So it is my great pleasure to introduce someone that we have a lot of respect for, and that has a lot of respect for us. So please, Della Al-Baladi, who is a representative of...
Thank you, Nandita. Thank you to everyone who is here. I've been given the task to talk about how you can be engaged in the political process and how we're going to really need you at this time. As Nandita has said, I've been to many of these events listening and learning, but now is the time that all of this energy and this focus and the actions that we're seeing, the conduct that we're seeing, where we need your help even more so now. It has been gratifying to see the action at the legislature. You know, we had been talking about this all summer long, talking about how we could have done something during a special session, but it wasn't the time, and now is the time for it. I'm happy to report that there's probably over 30 bills that have been introduced this session related to law enforcement, sensitive locations, regulation of police, of masking, protecting our schools, bills to ensure legal representation and due process is observed. So I can't give you the list of these bills because they're so fresh, hot off the presses. They haven't even had referrals yet. But there are going to be many bills and there's going to be much activity. I'm so glad to be here. Another person who's been here at many of the meetings is Senator Carl Rhodes, and he's going to, Senator, raise your hand. Senator and Representative Tarnas will be actually leading much of the efforts at the legislature. So we appreciate them so much. Senator will be able to talk more specifically about the bills later on tonight at the end of this. And so please just stay engaged. Now more than ever, your participation is going to be critical. We are seeing the people come down to the Capitol. We're seeing people knock on doors, and we're seeing mobilization across so many sectors. So many people are being touched by this activity and being and feeling afraid. And so it's being in community together with you and coming to the legislature where you can have your voices heard, and we can translate that commitment into policies that will protect our people. And that's the most important thing. So thank you for being here. And I'm really looking forward to more of the work that's going to be done by this community. Thank you, Nandita.
Okay, so I'm a sociologist and I study immigration policy, and I study nationalism and I study racism. So as soon as Trump trotted out his mass deportation policy when he was running for the second presidency, I knew that the only way that that was going to be possible to carry out 1 million deportations a year was through a creation of a police state in the United States. And here we are. We have masked, unidentified, heavily armed men and some women running around like Trump's private goon squad, racially profiling people on the streets, thrusting them into unmarked cars and spiriting them away, grabbing children from schools and workers from job sites, battering down people's doors without judicial warrants, arresting and detaining people for charges that are dropped after those people have been terrified and spent time in jail. They're also killing people. Federal agencies carrying out immigration enforcement have been on a surveillance shopping spree following a massive budget increase, accelerating the deployment of dystopian tech. They are actively using facial recognition technology to scan faces and fingerprints for instant identification against immigration databases. They're literally going up to protesters' faces, and they already know their names and where they live. They have cell site stimulators, also called stingrays, that mimic cell towers, forcing nearby mobile devices like ours to connect to them, allowing agents to locate us. They are using commercial data and broker surveillance, buying vast amounts of location data generated from apps on people's phones. They have spyware and phone hacking technology to remotely hack into phones to read, I'm sorry to say, our encrypted messages on Signal and WhatsApp. They are using digital forensics to unlock and extract data from seized mobile devices. They are using AI and data analysis, which ingest and analyze disparate databases to map out and locate targets, which is us. They have automated license plate readers to track the movement history of our vehicles. They have social media monitoring technologies to scrape social media, the dark web, and other online sources to build dossiers on us. And they are using drones for aerial surveillance of operations and of protesters. All of this is being aided and abetted by ICE accessing local data through partnerships with local law enforcement. So the bills that we are passing or trying to pass this legislative session are crucial. This fascist dystopia is funded by Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, in which ICE was appropriated the most funding of any federal agency, a total of almost $75 billion allocated to be spent over 4 years. $45 billion for detention capacity and almost $30 billion for increasing the number of ICE goons. With this new funding and other appropriations, ICE is now larger than the annual budget of all other federal law enforcement agencies combined. It's not just ICE, though, when we're talking about abolish ICE. It's also the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency, who are also part of the shock troops. Remember, it was 2 CBP, Customs and Border Protection agents, yet to be identified, who executed Alex Preddy as he lay face down and beaten on the ground. On top of what ICE is given, CBP was allocated an additional $65 billion. Trump is also building a detention industrial complex, right? We all know, remember Tom Homan with his $50,000 cash in a bag that he got from some private prison contractor? This detention industrial complex will be populated by the growing number of people who Trump has stripped of their legal status. Since Trump was elected this second time, 1.6 million people have lost their legal status as a result of his actions. So it's not just they're here, he's making people illegal. The detention system expanded to over 100 additional facilities by late last year, utilizing temporary soft-sided tent facilities to manage the influx. The 2026 budget that is being voted on now includes over $500 million for increased bed capacity and billions for private prison contracts. Immigration detention has the most private jails or prisons in the U.S. prison system, far more than does the criminal justice system. More detention centers mean more detained people. By December 2025, somewhere around 68,000 people were detained on a daily basis, a nearly 75% increase from early 2025. And the plans are, of course, to further increase that capacity. ICE is also on another buying spree, this time of warehouses, literally to warehouse those made illegal, and others caught up in the mass deportation dragnet with the aim of 1 million people deported per year. Recently, ICE paid $102 million of our taxpayers' dollars for a warehouse near Hagerstown, Maryland, and $70 million for a warehouse in Arizona. ICE plans to use up to 23 more warehouses around the country to detain migrants in Minnesota, Indiana, Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. The rapid expansion has led to overcrowded, and according to a report from the American Immigration Council, brutal conditions in some facilities alongside reduced oversight. Liam Ramos, the 5-year-old who was used as bait by DHS agents last week in Minnesota, is one of those people in one of those brutal detention facilities along with his father. You may have heard that little Liam is ill. His father says he's been depressed. And he's not eating. When Representative Joaquin Castro of Texas visited Liam and his father this week, Liam didn't wake up. He just lied limp in his father's arms for the entire 30 minutes that Representative Castro was allowed to visit. RACES, RAICES, which is a wonderful nonprofit working in Texas, has worked with families in detention centers for years. And they say that in the detention facilities that Liam is in, that they often hear about food with bugs or worms, half-frozen food being given, guards yelling at parents if their kids are making too much noise, or if the kids are asking for an apple. In addition to this, Trump's politics of mass deportation are increasingly flouting the law and the constitutional rights of migrants and citizens alike. In March and April of 2025, we all remember that the Trump regime used the 1789 Alien Enemies Act to send more than 280 young men to a foreign jail notorious for torture. They were sent in secret with no notice to their loved ones or attorneys. That is otherwise known as disappearances. And they were carried out against the explicit orders of a U.S. District Court judge. And to date, there has been no action taken against anyone for acting against those court orders, as much as that judge has so far tried. Trump officials are blatantly lying. They're telling us that we don't see what we see, that we don't hear what we hear, that we can't trust our eyes when our neighbors are taken away from us. So what Trump's mass deportation policies and his anti-immigrant core of his fascist agenda is doing is upending the United States. Absolutely upending the United States. Trump's motto is that what is bad for migrants is good for citizens. It is not. What is bad for migrants is very, very bad for everyone who is not directly profiting from this fascist bonanza, because it's also a huge profit-making machine. Surveillance tools are being used to monitor not just migrants, but also to track protesters and other US citizens, like journalists, like comedians, like lawyers who are watching and disagreeing. Having a president surrounded only by sycophants, flouting the courts and the Constitution is the path to a dictatorship. We are on that path very firmly. At least 30 people have died so far while being held in immigration detention centers, the highest death toll since 2004, the year after the agency was created. One of those deaths has been officially classified as a homicide. Geraldo Lunas Campos was killed while in ICE custody on January the 3rd, 2026. 2 citizens have been executed on our streets. Renee Good was summarily killed by an ICE agent on January the 7th, 4 days later in 2026. Alex Preddy was executed by CBP agents on January 24th. Trump's reign of terror has been aided by the cowardice of the powerful and of the institutions that they lead. Many news media corporations, fancy law firms, universities, whether they're fancy or not, most of Congress, and many state legislators have all bent the knee to the Trump regime. And with their cowardice, they have actively facilitated the nightmare whose contours we are only starting to clearly see now. in the face of the fascist dystopia of the Trump regime and its corporate backers, however, is us, is the bravery of everyday people, those who are directly targeted and those who stand in solidarity with them. Bravery is defined by taking action when it is not safe to do so, right? You're not brave if you take an action when it's going to be safe. Bravery is taking action when it is not safe to do so, right? Remember that when you meet with your governor and with your legislators. It is clear that in both Trump presidencies, it is our outrage against the violations of the humanity of those of us classified as migrants that stops Trump, that scares Trump. If you recall the first administration, it was the horrific, heartbreaking scenes of children being separated from their families that was the first time that Trump actively reversed his policies. And today we're seeing a tonal shift in what the Trump regime is doing. This is not a surprise because anti-immigration politics is the core of fascist politics around the world, including here in the United States. What that means is that when we stand with migrants, we are clearly rejecting fascism. And wow, have people stood up. It is amazing. So while I predicted that we would have a police state if Trump did in fact implement his mass deportation regimes, I didn't predict this. This is amazing what we're doing. I am so heartened. As a migration scholar, I mostly deal in horror and fascist, nationalist, ugly, racist rhetoric about how horrible migrants are. So to see everyday people in the United States risk their lives for migrants and stop Trump, that is amazing. People have been extraordinarily brave. Bravery is people blowing whistles to warn those around them that anonymous, heavily armed goons are coming for them. Blowing whistles even as those goons scream obscenities at them, use chemical weapons against them, beat them, arrest them, and even kill them. Bravery is looking federal officials in the eye and saying, "You are lying to us." Bravery is helping someone beaten down by immigration enforcement thugs to get back up. Bravery is being a child locked in an ICE camp, but rising up to protest your conditions and those of the others in your midst. Last week, on January the 24th, the same day that CBP killed Alex Preddy, hundreds of children located in an ICE camp in Dilley, Texas, rose up and demanded their freedom. Children. These are the children who are being given rotten food and putrid water, and they rose up to protect one of their own. Their core demand was that little Liam Ramos, the 5-year-old from Minnesota, be taken care of. What all this bravery teaches us, yes, it is scary to act when it is not safe to do so, but we are safer when we act collectively. What we've also learned is that bravery moves the political needle. January 23, 26 Economist YouGov poll found that 55% of people in the United States now say they have very little confidence in ICE. A New York Times Siena poll found that 61% of respondents think ICE has gone too far. And perhaps most significantly, a January YouGov poll found 46% of people polled want to abolish ICE. Talk about moving that needle. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that we're almost at 50% of the US population wanting to abolish ICE? You remember when they told us we were crazy? And now they are us. Bravery makes change for the better. Cowardice makes things worse. We are here tonight to be brave and act collectively to demand from our legislature that they too courage up and act to pass bills that protect migrants. We will accept no less. Hawaii J20 is actively supporting and working to pass 4 bills in particular. Later, after the speakers have spoken, we will hear from the organizations that have proposed these bills, the ACLU of Hawaii and the Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights, about these bills in particular. But one of the bills is HB 1840. That requires Hawaii Teacher Standards Boards to develop alternative pathways for visiting international educational permits. Teachers like the ones that ICE targeted from the Philippines. SB 2059 prohibits local law enforcement from entering into an agreement for immigration enforcement. So no local cooperation on immigration enforcement. Yeah. SB 2203 is the No Secret Police Bill. It would establish as an offense the use of a mask or personal disguise by any law enforcement officer. And SB 2058, the Safe Spaces Bill, requires the AG to designate safe community places where federal law enforcement agents are prohibited from enacting immigration enforcement. You cannot go to schools, you cannot go to churches, you cannot go to healthcare facilities, off limits. So before I introduce our first speaker, I want to show you the first of 4 videos from our Stories from Hawaii project. The Stories of Hawaii project was created by Jason and Miley and Malcolm and Gay because many people think that the Trump administration's policy do not impact us here in Hawaii. So Stories from Hawaii produces stories that show us otherwise, one story at a time. So there's 3 videos or 4, sorry, 3 videos for you to see. So let's get started.
It was only February. And as much as I might have doomsday been preparing for some things and some changes with the Trump administration, I wasn't expecting it to affect me or my family immediately. Aloha, my name is Laura, and I'm one of the owners here at Sunny's Local Grind. So you've probably by now heard a couple of my employees tell their story about when Homeland Security came into our restaurant on February 11th. I was not here, except for the fact that my manager on duty, Annie, had called me and I was on the phone for portions of this. We didn't have any sort of formal policy in place for how our management should react if their government storms in asking for their papers. We didn't have any form of policy for my staff to stand up for their rights, to stand up for their potential international coworkers. And we didn't know that we needed to have that in place, which is part of why my voice wavers now, because it's scary. It's something that we weren't anticipating to happen immediately. It never is supposed to happen to you. And as Annie and Lisa both pointed out, we're small. We're local owned, we're community oriented. So our SEAMs are international, but our SEAMs are also I-9s and above board and legal. So when Annie calls me and says, do I have to find these I-9s and give them to these people? At first, I don't even know. I'm quickly Googling the answer. So as we're looking up the answer, we find out that, of course, you have to have a warrant before you can even ask for these documents. And on the Homeland Security's webpage alone, which was one of the sources I was quickly looking at, they stated you have to come in with a letter of intent. You have to identify yourself to a manager. You cannot go into private areas. And Lisa pointed on private because we feel that this is our restaurant and it's private. Well, in fact, the kitchen is private. The Homeland Security had no business being in my kitchen, and they were in the kitchen. They asked the staff for their documents. 2 of my cooks come from the island of Sepang. I don't trust this version of Homeland Security to know that that makes them American citizens. You know, they might not have the same exact passport I do. Actually, they do. They have 2 passports. In February, my chef thought it was funny to show his Saipan passport. We thought that was funny. It should be funny. It's not funny, because what if that Homeland Security officer or agent didn't recognize that that still makes him an American citizen? We're seeing this problem right now with Bad Bunny. Everybody crying that this isn't an American, decrying that this isn't someone that represents them. Puerto Rico is American. Sonny's now, as a small business, has an ICE policy in place. Should the Department of Homeland Security storm in again, we are going to pull our phones out. We're going to make sure we record it for you guys this time, because we didn't know that the public would need to see this so quickly. And in such a small mom and pop, we affect nobody. You know, we don't pay big enough taxes to affect the next tax bracket. So still very surprised, and we felt very targeted at the time. Now we do see it happening more and more often, but you're not supposed to fear hiring international staff. You feel you're part of a melting pot. I'm not supposed to fear talking publicly right now because I have an international staff. I'm not supposed to fear that because I'm American and I have that right. So that's what I take from this incident as a person, that my own rights have been and can be trampled on. It's what I take as an American citizen that is from a family of immigrants and employs immigrants, that without due process, they can't make jokes that should be funny, because that puts them in danger. So that's scary. And as a business owner, I will continue to hire foreign and immigrant with I-9s, because that's part of my community, but I shouldn't have to think twice about it. That makes me mad. So thank you for telling our stories, because they are happening at home now. They're happening in our tiny little 800 square foot restaurants. They're happening to veterans. They're happening to women-owned restaurants. It's in our community, and it's been here since February from our own experience. So I hope that whatever message you take from this, you help us maintain our rights. Thank you for listening. Aloha.
Thank you, Jason. So I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is also a member of YG20. Dr. Arcelita Imasa, who is a community physician at the Primary Care Clinic of Hawaii. She's a JAPSOM grad, and she, thank goodness, decided to stay and practice in Hawaii in order particularly to serve her migrant patients. So, Arce, is your microphone?
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. I do have some slides. Nandita, thanks for calling us all brave for being here tonight. Oh, it's hard to be brave now. It's been very hard, specifically in the last 2 weeks because of the. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Okay, I'll do this. Yeah, it's been very hard in the last 2 weeks, especially at work for me because of the viral season. And then all these things that's been happening or being done to our fellow migrants. When I get asked by J20 to share was like, I wondered like, what can I share? And
1 inch from the mic.
hello. Again. Again, I'm being brave by being here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm super tired. Physically, I feel inspired though that I'm seeing this community, and I know that I'm gonna go tonight having that inspiration to move on and continue to take care of my patients. Yeah, so I think I have something to share. There's something that I could, a unique voice that I could share. But I also want to share it on behalf of the health workers, or local health workers. I'm a community physician. My turf is Kalihi. Lots of working people of Kalihi. They travel from Kalihi to Waikiki to work as hotel workers, landscapers. They go everywhere. They work in the back of the kitchen of restaurants, hotels. Lots of low-wage earners and their families too. Yeah, so I feel like I can speak for them. I can speak on their behalf. I know what they're going through. And I'm coming from a very highly privileged position, and I recognize that. So I also feel the burden to share what they're going through. And I am bearing witness to the suffering of our fellow migrants. But before I start, I have 10 minutes. Before I start, I just want to get a sense of who is in the room. Are there any healthcare workers here? Doctors, nurses, social workers, public health, physical therapists? Keep your hands raised. Caregivers. So caregivers, paid, both paid and unpaid. That's almost all of us. We are all health workers. Yeah. I think this is very important. I want to acknowledge you all as health workers because your voice is critical in this time. And we have the duty, the moral and ethical duty to protect life and defend the rights of migrants. That's just part of our role, yeah? And for a long time, many of us didn't fully see what was happening. We assumed healthcare would always continue, proceed. It's always gonna be there, the hospitals and the clinics will always stay open, we will always have a job, and that patients would always be able to come to our clinics and see us. We thought our role was simple, provide good clinical care, and everything else would somehow work itself out. But over time, we began to see the injustices happening more clearly. We saw how immigration enforcement was shaping who felt safe coming into our workplaces. We saw who suddenly disappeared in our schedules. I'm always anticipating, I start my day looking at the schedule. Before I never ask this question, who's not gonna be here today? We saw who sat in front of us with fear or terror in their bodies. And I'm seeing that more and more now. It's just that you can see it, you can feel it in the room too when they're scared. And there's something that they want to share or they want to tell you, but you just I gotta work hard to get it out of them. And once we saw these impacts, we cannot turn a blind eye anymore. So let me share with you the very concrete impacts of ICE enforcement in my practice. And as I share those, I want you to think about the faces and stories that come to mind in your work locally. Patients dying or delaying or avoiding care because they are afraid of ICE arrests, raids, or surveillance. Families missing appointments after a loved one has been detained or deported. Interruptions in treatment for chronic illnesses when people are moved, detained, or separated from their support system. Worsening mental health, anxiety, depression, and trauma symptoms that are directly linked to immigration enforcement. Growing stress and moral distress among healthcare workers who are trying to care for patients inside these constraints. These are our patients, these are our coworkers, these are our families. We also have to confront the inhumanity of detention and deportation that Nandita very vividly talked about, and also the deaths from medical neglect and the daily denial of dignity of migrants in detention. ICE, again, was responsible for more than 30 deaths in detention centers in 2025, the deadliest year in 2 decades. Already, at least 6 more have died in the first weeks of 2026. In many of these cases, medical neglect has been identified as a major factor. We know already, we heard about chronic crowding, the unsanitary conditions, the lack of food and access to health care, all that kind of stuff. And they are all linked to the preventable death that happened. And they are also linked to the ongoing serious harm that's happening to the migrants. As a medical doctor, I had the privilege, also the burden of reviewing the medical charts of 2 migrants in detention. And their stories really showed me what medical neglect looks like. So, okay, this is Greggy Sorio and Rebecca Pinyard. They are the 2 migrants in detention that I'm talking about. Both were denied for a significant period of time the medications and care that they urgently needed. Greggy developed sepsis or infection of the blood. He also developed severe inflammation of the colon. He was pooping blood, didn't get the care in the detention. It took a long time before he was sent in a hospital. And when he was there, he's very, very sick already. He eventually needed a toe amputation. He gets started on a medication that he needed for a very long time. This was around December. I checked with the people who are helping him in Tacoma Detention Center. They said the medication that he's supposed to receive this month, ICE has been denying that of him, and then they said they're gonna give it to him in February. And he really needs this medicine. This is a life-saving medicine for Greggy. Rebecca was in detention for months until she's not getting her medications, to the point that her kidney disease got worse, and eventually, very soon, she's gonna need dialysis. These are the cases that really tells us ICE doesn't care about health. ICE doesn't care about dignity. ICE doesn't care about life. And then we push back against the system, but what happens to the healthcare workers, right? We also fall as victims, like what happened to Preti. We also become targeted. So, one more. The question is, how much more can we take? Do we have to wait till things get even worse than what it is now? Migrants are dying in detention, and advocates are being killed by ICE and by the largest system of repression that enables it. I just wanna, before I go, I just wanna share about the concept of structural determinants of health. Structural determinants of health are those large systems and structures that tells us how power, money, and resources are distributed. Yeah, immigration policy is a structural determinant of health. It tells us where people can live safely, whether they feel safe seeking care, and how stable their income and housing are, and whether their families can stay together. So all of these structural determinants of health and social determinants of health show up in our clinics as blood pressure, blood sugar, pain, mood, and most importantly, trust. Yeah, we lose them in our clinics and in the hospital. The migrants don't show up because they don't trust us that we can protect them. So we're really, as health workers, we have to stand up and work together to defend our own people. That's what we do. I encourage or urge a lot of the health workers here to join the Rapid Response Coalition, be part of that. Let's share the Know Your Rights cards to our patients, hotline numbers, so that they're getting that concrete protection. Yeah, we use our voices to really name what we see as injustices and insist on the dignity of the migrants. And then we come together in collective action. So this is one example of what I did. I don't have money to get this printed out, but it's two small brown boxes, but it's a message that I leave in my waiting room. It says, to my patients, do you know someone who is missing or may have been detained or deported by ICE? Please trust me, let me know. When I see you in the room, I want you to share that with me. I want you to, I keep going on and on there. But I want them to be able to trust me and then be able to connect them to support services that they need. And also, one more thing, we are organizing a healthcare vigil on Sunday. We would like you all to join us. If you're a doctor, a nurse, social worker, physical therapist, public health worker, researcher, caregivers, please come join us. We want to show that force of healthcare workers, that we have a voice in what's happening right now. We invite you all to join us in remembrance of Alex Preti and all other migrants who have fallen victims of this horrible immigration policy. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Hi.
On October 28th, my husband, Raj, was taken by Homeland Security, processed by ICE, and put in the Federal Detention Center here in Honolulu. Hi, my name is Cheryl Bartlett. I'm the wife of Rogério Araújo. I call him Raj or Roger. Raj and I have been married for 17 years. Raj and I, as our marriage developed, tried very hard to go through the steps, the process of working through the immigration system. There was a glitch, and in 2012, Roger received a deportation notice. And we petitioned the court at the time with our attorney for what's called prosecutorial discretion. We received this discretion in the form of administrative closure. It is basically the two parties involved in the court hearing agreeing not to look at the case and letting it lie dormant. We had 12 years of truly creative and happy marriage under this administrative closure and the grace of that immigration court based on my disabilities. I'm legally blind. I have type 1 diabetes, juvenile onset. I was diagnosed at 6 years old. I'm 63 now. I think the math says that I've been living with this for 57 years. Probably have outlived my statistics, but a lot of that is due to Roger's care. He can tell when my blood sugar is high. He can tell when my blood sugar is too low. He knows what to do in either case. He has saved my life on numerous occasions. The current administration and guidance to ICE and Homeland Security has directed them to reopen cases like my husband's. And I've been told to summarily deport those who can be deported. I'd like you to imagine that your loved one made some administrative errors in the past, checked the wrong box, signed a wrong form, and as punishment, they're going to rip your loved one from your family, banish this loved one to another country with no concern or consideration for you or your family here in the US. We were having a beautiful life here in Hawaii. We were contributing to our community. So many in the community have reached out and expressed their support for keeping families together under these circumstances. I am a US citizen. I'm married to Rogerio Araujo, who takes care of me, who looks at me as a whole person, not as a person with disability, a whole person. And he provides, he stands in the gap where I need him to, where those disabilities are concerned. He truly is my partner, my lifeline in this life, my lover, my world.
I'm so grateful that you're here tonight. I'm grateful to be here as well with you. And I hope I can somehow add what energy and voice I have to make change for a better future. However, Roger will be deported next week. And I really feel compelled. I must go. I will go. I will go to Brazil. I need to help him, at least for a while. And then I'll come back and take care of medical issues. I wish to thank our doctor for speaking so candidly. And I guess I am one of those patients, you know, that's going to be deeply, deeply affected by this policy. But I am determined. I'm going to learn how to speak Portuguese in 1 week. Anyway.
Thank you. Gabe? Thank you so much. Hey, our second speaker today also has important stories to share with us. Reverend Dr. Estela Chao-Reza, who is the Executive Director of the Faith Action for Community Equity, which is a grassroots organization organizing faith communities. She's been an ordained minister for 5 years. So welcome, Estela.
Thank you very much. Okay, can you hear me? Okay. I'm not here to preach, so be thankful. But thank you for this opportunity to speak. And I want to begin by being very clear and honest. I have not personally heard of ICE raids taking place inside churches here on Oahu, but I want to say that plainly because accuracy matters, and also if this has occurred, we need to know as a community. And so I want to say just as clearly that the absence of raids inside church or houses of worship does not mean that our people are not deeply affected by the current immigration crackdown that's going on, because they are every single day. And I speak today wearing two different hats, both as the executive director for Faith Action Hawaii and also as a local pastor. In both roles, I am in close relationship with families, workers, elders, young people, and children who are navigating life under an increasingly aggressively and unpredictable immigration enforcement system. And what I can tell you is this: even when enforcement is not happening visibly in our sanctuaries, in our houses of worship, it is shaping how people live, where they go, what risks they take, and how safe they feel in our community. One of the most immediate impacts we are seeing is fear. Quiet, persistent, often invisible, but very present fear. People are afraid to leave their homes. They are afraid to drive. They are afraid to go to work. They are afraid to attend appointments, as we've heard. And yes, they are also afraid to attend and go to their houses of worship. I have spoken with congregants who have stopped attending services, not because they have lost faith, but because they are afraid of being stopped on the way, or because they worry that gathering in a public space will somehow make them more visible. I have heard from parents who no longer allow their children to attend church activities unless they can personally accompany them. I have seen families sit closer to exits or leave early or avoid community events altogether. These are not dramatic stories that make headlines, but they are deeply real. For many immigrant families, especially mixed status families, as we've heard from Cheryl, the fear is not abstract. It is rooted in what they are seeing happening to their neighbors, to their coworkers, to their extended family members, both here in Hawaii and across the country. People are hearing about arrests at workplaces, at traffic stops, and at courthouses. We see the videos. And they're receiving text messages or phone calls that begin, "Did you hear what happened?" I say that because that's the phone call we received on Christmas Day of a friend who attends a local congregation and happened to be driving on their way to their house that morning and was detained. Racial profiled. A little beat up white truck with random items in the back, mostly construction tools, and a dark-skinned man driving. When there is enforcement, it affects you in multiple ways. From the person that is receiving the enforcement to the person that hears. And these are not just about people who are randomly stopped. This is about everyone. These are families with some members who are US citizens and some who are not. Parents who are undocumented, raising children who are born here in the United States. Grandparents who have lived in Hawaii for decades, helping to care for citizen grandchildren. Families with mixed statuses are being affected every single day. I've spoken with parents who are terrified of being separated from their children, or parents who have prepared emergency plans in case they are detained, writing down phone numbers, arranging guardianship, explaining to their children what to do if mom or dad does not come home. Imagine carrying the weight while trying to work, pay rent, show up for school events, and still be emotionally present for your children. This is the reality for many families, and they are in our faith communities. I want to focus on how the children are affected by this. Children who worry when their parents are late coming home. Children who are anxious at school because they don't know if their family will still be together at the end of the day. Children who are learning far too early that the systems meant to protect people can also tear families apart. As a pastor, I can tell you that that kind of fear leaves a very deep spiritual wound. Not only are we seeing people avoid essential services as their health care, postponing medical appointments, skipping legal consultations, they're not accessing benefits for their children that their children are entitled to, not because they don't think they need these services, but because they're afraid of the interaction with the institution and how it could expose them or their loved ones to this law enforcement. This fear puts people's health, safety, and long-term stability at risk. In our congregations, it shows up as absences, as silence, as people carrying burdens that they are afraid to name, even in a silent prayer request. Pastoral conversations that used to center on celebration or growth are now about contingency planning, court dates, and what happened if someone is detained. The work of ministry shifts from accompaniment in joy to accompaniment in crises. This is why these bills matter, not just for everyday folks, but for people of faith. Our call is not to just pray for people who are afraid, but it is to advocate for policies that reduce fear, increase dignity, and protect human life. Even without raids happening inside churches, the fear that enforcement could happen in sacred and essential spaces is already keeping people away. Faith communities believe that houses of worship should be places of refuge, not risk. Schools should be places of learning, not fear. Hospitals and clinics should be places of healing, not surveillance. These bills align with deeply held moral values about sanctuary, care, and human dignity. And so when we hear these stories, when we talk to our neighbors, when we talk to our friends, it's reminding them that people live in fear regardless of if they share it or not. For this is deeply troubling. Whatever faith or spiritual tradition you may have, we each carry different values and beliefs that teach us to welcome the stranger, to protect families, and to care for the most vulnerable. And when policies are created for fear, so pervasive that people are afraid to attend school, to worship, to seek medical attention, and to live fully, this is not just a policy issue. It is a deeply moral one. I know that we each have different ways of showing up. But showing up tonight and engaging others to come with you the next time is how we will continue to grow this movement. Whether that's in faith communities, or clinics, or schools, or workplaces, our communities are resilient. Families are showing up for one another. Faith leaders are stepping up. And if they're not, send them my way. But I also want to encourage you to ask, How can there be places of safety, accompaniment, and solidarity? Because that's the work that we're here to do. And so I just want to say, to close up my portion, this is not just for policymakers. It's for every single one of us. For those of us who are not living in fear under the constant threat of detention or separation, our responsibility is not to look away. It is to notice who is missing, to notice who has stopped showing up, to notice who is sitting in the back, leaving early, or carrying fear quietly. As people of faith, we believe that fear does not have the final word. And so I encourage you to bring others into this movement. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today.
Before we move on to our third and last stories from Hawaii, I just wanted to let you know, if you didn't already know, that there are opportunities for you to sign up to have an account to submit testimony at the Hawaii State Legislature for the bills that protect migrants. So if you don't already have an account, please see one of us when you leave, and we'll be happy to set up an account for you. I also have to ask you now, we're going to circulate a donations box. So Hawaii J20 is a completely grassroots. We're not an NGO. We're all volunteers, and it requires a little bit of money to organize these things. So if you have any spare cash, please feel free to put it in the box. And if you don't have any spare cash, no problem. So maybe we're ready for our third video. Thanks.
Trump keeps saying that, you know, he's wanting to deport criminals that are like the worst offenders. But, you know, my dad is he's not a criminal. Like, ICE agents just came to his house and picked him up in the parking garage, and it's really devastating because, you know, this has like been my worst fear since I was a child, you know. Growing up, like, it's always been one of my worst fears that he was going to get deported. So now it's actually happening. It's really emotional for me. I was able to speak to him just a couple of times. He called me from the federal detention center on Oahu, and he said he was doing okay, that he was meeting people from, you know, that were coming in to the detention center here from that, you know, they were picked up in like San Diego, you know, other parts of the United States. When they transferred him to LA, they just put him on a plane. They didn't even tell the lawyer. He made a call on the airplane through another passenger's phone. He found out through, you know, that kind person who let him use his phone, saying like, oh yeah, this is a United flight going to LA. We spoke to the lawyer about this, and she was extremely shocked because this was the first time like this has happened to one of her clients. When we were speaking to him when he was in Houston, and he was talking about how he slept in a really cold room. He said he was shivering on the floor without a blanket. They put him on the plane with only like some pants and a shirt. He had nothing else when he was transferred. And then now that he's in Houston, he's saying like the area that he's in is just like this like weird tent. But there's like they can't go outside. He said he hasn't seen the sun, and everyone's sick over there. What this government is doing is not correct in any way. Morally, legally, it's just, they're not even doing what they said that they're doing. Trump is saying that he's deporting the worst of the worst criminals, but that's not my dad. He's been in Hawaii for 30 years. He stayed here because of me, actually. He wanted to raise me, basically. He wanted to provide, a father figure, provide me with emotional, financial support, and he's a legal resident. He's not a citizen, but, he's a legal resident. He was taken into custody October 21st, I believe, detained without a warrant. And, we still never got an answer as to why he was detained. He's under TPS legal protection until November 18th.
Hi, I need to make a correction just to what I said previously. Me and my family, we had thought that my father's TPS, his temporary protection status, was valid until November 18th. But unfortunately, that was not the case. Trump had filed an order moving the termination date up to September 8th. The day that they made that official was August 20th. We didn't know, we weren't notified. Everything is just so confusing and things are moving really fast.
I wish, I could bring my dad back home, and I wish I could bring, everyone who is being illegally detained and deported. I wish I could bring them home as well, because it's not right. Taking these people from their homes and their families is.
Can you imagine if we had the power to define what was legal and illegal? And if we said that no human being is illegal and that separating people from their children should be illegal? We actually do have that power, right? We have to make that demand and organize and win it. So I'm happy to introduce our third and last speaker, who is Allison Blankenship, who is the director of the Iolani School's Ka'i program, which serves under-resourced first-generation students from Palolo Valley. She started the program 17 years ago, so welcome, Allison.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. I want to say thank you to Peter Greenhill, who's right there, who has been a longtime mentor of mine and who invited me tonight. I'm trying to be brave and channel my grandma, who was a Holocaust survivor and only survived that because of the kindness of strangers who hid her in their house. And I was just remembering that right before Trump was elected the first time, when she moved to the United States, she continued to fight for justice in so many different ways till she was in her 90s. And when Trump was elected, right before he was elected the first time, her answering machine was, if you're voting for Trump, don't bother leaving a message. If you're voting for anyone else, leave a message at the beep. So my name's Allison. I'm the director of the Iolani School Ka'i programs. We're a long-term educational support program for under-resourced first-generation students from Palolo. Over the last 17 years, we've grown from really educational programs in the summer and after school to much more comprehensive supports because the families we work with, like many families in Hawaii, are just at about the poverty threshold. So what that means is that, one event, job loss or increase in rent, medical bill can push them into a crisis. And so our program has built up an emergency fund to help with rent, utilities, medical bills, just to be ready to be a stabilizing force for the students and the families we work with. And that's kind of become our most important role. And when I think about my students and the families we serve, I just think that they're in a constant state of instability. And now our undocumented or, families who don't have full citizenship, that instability is compounded by fear. So tonight I'm going to share a story of one of our families because it's very emblematic of what's going on in our country. This family is a married couple with twin 16-year-olds. The parents are undocumented, and we knew that. They were forthcoming about that with us when we selected their children 5 years ago. They're a model family. They work hard. They volunteer in their community. They're super committed to their church and their children's schools. And they've raised phenomenal children. When Trump was elected the second term, they became increasingly anxious and reached out to us and just for advice. And so on their behalf, we reached out to immigration attorneys. And again, we got the same advice, which was very simple, but very unsettling. It was, tell them to lay low and hope they're not targeted. And so on May 23rd of last year, their worst fear became a reality when ICE raided their home in Pololo Valley. It was a Friday afternoon at about 5, and their teenage son called us from inside their house. And he said their house was surrounded by ICE agents, about 30 of them, and they were in a little room and they didn't know what to do. And we told him, don't open the door, just do not answer the door. And we called, we used our network to call every immigration attorney that we knew. And by sheer luck, one of them was available and got to their house within 30 minutes. What followed was a 6-hour standoff. ICE intended to take both of the parents, who were both undocumented, but they were unable to produce a warrant for the father's arrest. And at the 11th hour, they produced a warrant for the mother's arrest, and they took her into their custody. I want to be super clear about who this mom is. She's not a threat. She's not a criminal. She has no criminal convictions. She's lived, responsibly and quietly in her community for over 20 years. She's volunteered for the past 12 years at Ali'olani Elementary, supporting children who are not her own. She and her husband are super active in their church, and again, they've raised these amazing kids. She's the kind of person that every community wants to have. Since the night she was taken by ICE, this family has been living through what can only be described as a nightmare. In the early days, they received conflicting and terrifying information, first being told she would face expedited removal with no opportunity for appeal, then being told she would be deported immediately, and then they endured days with no updates at all, and then they were told she was deported, which was false, and then they finally learned that she was being held in the federal detention center here by the airport. For the past 8 months, this family has existed in a constant state of uncertainty, fear, and grief. And the greatest harm has fallen on their children. The twins are minors. They rely on their mom. For stability, for guidance, for love and care. For the first 3 months, they weren't allowed to see her at all. After countless emails and petitions, they were finally permitted a single 1-hour visit. Only through persistent advocacy by our attorney and relentless follow-up are they now allowed to see her on Friday nights, and that's where they are right now. I've been to the federal detention center many times, and I can only describe it as an alternate universe, one where children see their moms for a brief period of time in a cold, stark room surrounded by guards. This administration's immigration crackdown has completely upended their lives. The kids are left grappling with impossible questions of why their mom was taken when officials claim they're targeting the worst of the worst. Why does their family have to endure this? And every day they live with the fear that she will be deported. The instability inflicted on this family is profound, and it is inhumane. I understand that immigration enforcement has become increasingly rigid and that the system claims to prioritize public safety, but nothing about this mom aligns with that narrative. It has been 8 months and 7 days since she was taken by ICE. Her criminal charges were dismissed by a judge in early December. Her case was changed from expedited removal to standard removal proceedings, the same status as her husband, and yet she remains detained. Her continued detention serves no legitimate purpose. It does not make our community safer. What it does do is traumatize her children, destabilize a family, and punish a woman whose only so-called crime was trying to give her kids a better life. That is a moral failure. Stories like hers are why this work matters. Behind every policy decision are real families, real children, real communities paying the price. I thank you for listening. Thank you for standing with the families. Thank you for doing the hard, necessary work of making our communities safer and more humane.
Thank you, Allison. We have representatives of 2 organizations who have put forward the legislation that we need to see passed. So I'd like to invite representatives from the ACLU and from the Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights to come up and speak very briefly about the legislation you're advancing. Thank you. Hi, Liza.
Mandy and I are on a speaking tour these days. Thank you so much for having us and for being really interested in this and thank you for Senator Rhodes from the Judiciary because all of our bills will be going through your committee. So there's a whole package of bills that we're looking at in the campaign for immigrant justice right now. And those have come through a lot of groundwork. The Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights represents about 30 immigrant serving and led organizations across the Pai'aina. So we have spent, since I was here last, about 6 months ago or something, I was thinking about how much things have grown and how many events we've done and educated people. We are ready. We are, if a little bit scared and overwhelmed by the 42 bills that we just saw drop and get referred. And we're excited. In that package, one of our priorities is restoration of sensitive locations. Department of Homeland Security used to have a memo that they abided by wherein they did not conduct operations at what are considered sensitive locations. This is a sensitive location. Queens Hospital is a sensitive location. Elementary school is a sensitive location, but also so are protests and weddings and funerals. To the best of our ability, we are going to try to pass a bill that creates some type of protocol and protection around most of those sensitive locations. That a lot of people have gotten educated on what types of warrants, an administrative warrant versus a judicial warrant that ICE uses. An administrative warrant is basically them signing their own homework, saying, yes, we did this and we'd like to go pick up this person. That's not even really a warrant in that sense. And we would like them, if they are going to go into a sensitive location, that they need to show a judicial warrant. It has been signed by a judge or a magistrate. And we can regulate it to that end because we can't actually stop ICE from going into any place where they have a judicial warrant. So even this bill will not be as protective as the former policy that they used to abide by. But we've traveled around the country. Maryland has one, Colorado has one, Illinois is working on something, New Jersey. So we have precedent. We're working with the Attorney General's office to make sure that we can, just got some guidance in my inbox from the Maryland Attorney General's office saying like, yeah, their bill was good. I think you're a go ahead here. So we are doing our due diligence, but looking at those, we will need it will be a lot to coordinate because not only is it about those places and enforcing that agents can't come in without a judicial warrant, but in order for that to be enforced, people need to know that, right? And so those are a lot of different institutions to educate, to help them with their policies, to define who is the person that is going to receive the agent, where they're going to put them. You don't want them just walking into the emergency room and waiting in the emergency room at Queens. That's going to disrupt all of those other patients and community that is coming in there. So we've got a lot of stuff to work out. We ran this bill, HB 440, last session. It got pretty far, but we couldn't get it all the way. So we're hoping to bring that back this time. And this is the one that, we definitely, Mandy will talk about no secret police. Those things are very important as well. But when we talk to our members, the folks that are impacted on the ground, the things that were most important to them are, can we get to a doctor's appointment? Can we get medical care? Can our kids go to school? Can we pursue justice at the courts? And those very basic human things. And we want to make sure that we are listening to those individuals and we're putting our efforts forward on that. We do have some bill numbers for you. I'll share them in the back too, but basically we've got about 4 different versions. SB 3237, SB 2058, so that just stands for Senate bill. HB House Bill 1870 and House Bill 2445. And I think that we will at least have one of those heard this coming Friday. So watch your inbox. Watch your inbox because we will make sure action alerts for those get out on Wednesday. We know a little bit in advance that's not usually how things go. Usually you get 48 hours. And then you need to get that testimony in, about 24 hours before, so you've got a short window. So, be thinking about your testimony now. On this case, we want a bunch of written testimony. If you want to come down to the building and testify in person, you're very, very welcome. Look for myself or Mandy or Sergio was here, but I don't see him anymore. You'll see the same faces at every hearing. And we would love to have you.
Watch your inbox. Who's the email going to come from?
I'm guessing that J20 will probably pass on some information on this to you on a regular basis. And indivisible. Yeah. We will send out the action alerts and they will send those on for the priority bills that you guys have defined. So, and we will include in that talking, you'll probably, through us, you can get talking points, we'll have testimony templates, and eventually, hopefully in the next month, as these bills progress, there will also be more deep dive webinars that you can watch on what the bills really do and more from a more technical aspect. So, mahalo.
Thank you, Liza. Mandy from the ACLU of Hawaii.
I think I move the mic down. Liza's so tall, I'm like her sidekick. My name is Mandy Fernandez. I'm the policy director with the ACLU of Hawaii. Thank you so much for inviting us out today. And thank you so much to Senator Rose, who's introduced, who's consistently been like a really strong voice on civil rights throughout his career at the Ledge, and then also who has introduced some really important immigration bills this year. You guys had a committee hearing on Tuesday where a bill that would establish an offense for a law enforcement officer to do the extreme masking is being heard. And so we'll be sending out an action alert around that pretty soon. So please do watch your inboxes. To take a step back real fast, legislative advocacy is incredibly important at the state level right now, but it is one tool. It's not the only tool. And at the ACLU of Hawaii, we're using the tools of litigation, public education, and legislation to all combat what we're seeing at the federal level and to shield our state against those civil rights abuses. But there are lots of other tools available. A boycott is one. We saw the general strike and boycott today. That is an incredibly necessary and effective tactic to challenge authoritarianism. We've seen that throughout history. It's not optional. It's something that we have to continuously do. And I always have a hard time working in policy when I and pushing for a bill, and I know that it's not going to do everything. I know that there's not one single state bill and there's not a million state bills that could be passed that could absolutely guarantee that ICE is not going to show up in our state or at your door. We don't have the authority to do that. And so understanding that from the go and understanding that it's going to take all sorts of strategies and tactics, at least for the next 5 years, to make sure that our communities are safe is paramount right now. And to be able to engage and know that we all have a role to play and that we all have strengths and gifts to bring to the resistance. We are supporting this year, we're taking the lead within the advocates on the No Secret Police bill. Have you guys heard about the No Secret Police Act? I know that has been gaining a lot of momentum around the country. And I want to acknowledge that masking, extreme masking, concealment of identities of ICE, that is a strategy. Violence, disorientation is the point. And so once we understand that, we understand both the value and the limitations of a bill like this. Because we are just combating one of the symptoms of the underlying problem. But in doing so, we are showing that our state is not going to put up with it and that it's not acceptable here. I think it's incredibly valuable to show up, show mass resistance in this moment, and it's the only way that we're going to win. And this is one way of doing so. I also wanted to highlight that there are a number of bills that prohibit or severely limit the ability of local and state police to engage in these cooperative agreements. We're talking about either ICE or DHS deputizing local police to do their dirty work for them because they want to multiply their forces. They can't do this on their own. They can't carry out their agenda on their own. And that is completely optional. Our police don't have to cooperate. Unfortunately, they just got they're getting a huge windfall for what's called the 287G program. And that's the voluntary program where local police can be deputized to carry out ICE enforcement actions. They're going to start getting funds dangling in front of them. The federal administration's been doing a really great job of cutting critical benefits and critical services to vulnerable communities. They're threatening to starve out the states and localities if we don't do what they say. And then they're going to dangle billions of dollars in front of our local police to carry out this cruel and abusive immigration agenda. And we don't have to stand for it. We do not have to do that. It's really important to get out in support of that measure as well. Like Liza said, we are going to be sending out action alerts. I will offer hope in this moment from what we've seen in Minnesota that this is possible. I believe that the success of this resistance is inevitable and that we're all going to be part of it.
Thank you, Natalie. Lisa Gibson from Indivisible Hawaii's statewide network.
Hi, everybody. Indivisible is kind of the army. These guys are the policy experts. We do what they tell us to do. And you can actually go to our website and you can pick a topic that you're interested in. We're chasing their bills, we're chasing their bills. But guess what? On March 28th, No Dictators #3 is coming out. So we need you all there. We're going to totally need you in the legislature. We're probably going to need you at the city council as well. So go to indivisiblehawaii.org, watch for information about No Dictators that's coming up. We will prevail. It's messy and it's going to take a while. But people are showing up. And you've all heard the statistic that it takes 3.5% of the population. I think the hands-off protest last April was, I can't remember, but 2 million people. Let's say the first No Kings on the mainland, No Dictators here was, I don't know how many we got to, 5 million maybe across the country. We got to 7 million people across the country in October. I'll bet you we hit 12 million, maybe more, when the next No Dictators / No Kings happens. Please show up. and support these bills and stay connected. We need everybody. Thank you.
I know we've kept you here for a very long time. We've had a jam-packed schedule, but I want to make sure that we have some time to hear from Senator Carl Rhodes. Senator Carl Rhodes has been elected senator 10 times. From the 13th district, which is where we're at, so we're in his home turf.
Well, thank you for that extra 10 years. I've actually only been elected 3 times. I was in the House before that. So no, I got my first political job on Capitol Hill in 1988. I interned for Senator John Kerry. Some of you might have heard of him. My first paying job was with a woman named Louise Slaughter, back when women in the Congress were pretty rare. She was like 33 in the entire body. I also worked for a congressman named Elliot Engel for a couple of years. And when I went to law school, came down here, didn't really enjoy practicing law that much and went into politics. And surprisingly, in 2000, well, actually, I had 5 sessions as staff before I ran for office. In 2006, I ran for office, the Holly boy from Chinatown, and even as a surprise to me, I won. I have made the best of that. I've been in the legislature. This is my 20th session as a member. So hopefully that will convince you that I know what I'm talking about, because I know what I'm talking about. There are 2 tracks here, and it's been talked about already. And I'm glad Mandy Fernandez said that all the stuff that we do at the state level, it's important, and you can help. And I really, really need you to come out to my committee meetings. My committee is not the only one that has a say in this, but it's one of the important ones. Let me tell you a quick story about what impresses the legislature. The legislature is not impressed with good polling numbers for a particular issue, although our polling numbers are very good on this issue in Hawaii. What we are impressed by are the devoted, almost fanatical minority that shows up for every hearing on the topic in mass. They all want to talk, even though it drags the thing out for hours and hours. That's what we're impressed by. And this group here can impress the whole legislature if you just all show up for every hearing on these bills. That's a huge time commitment. We're talking about, I don't know, in the end, maybe 6 or 7 of them will be moved. The other ones we're not going to hear them all. There's just too many of them that overlap too much, but we'll hit all the points. But the other part of it is, I believe is more important at this point is the Democrats taking back the U.S. House of Representatives. That's really where the action is this year. Right now, the Republicans have a 1-seat majority because of illness, a couple of empty seats, and the fact that Gavin Newsom said, you know what? You didn't put the woman from New Mexico in, you didn't swear her in for like 6 weeks. So the special election in California to replace the one missing member from California, I'm going to schedule it on the last legal day that I can schedule it. And in the meantime, you can just have a 1-seat majority. So what all this says is we will take back the U.S. House unless the Republicans find a very effective way to cheat in all the states. Not just because there are some advantages to federalism. The elections are run at the state level. So you have to cheat in all 50 states to make it work. Otherwise, if you look at the history of administrations in their second year, in their second term, they always lose. There's one exception, I forget what it was, but there's only one. And we have we're in the minority, like I said, right now by 1. If the body was completely full, I believe we're down by 3. We need to flip 2 seats. We can do that. And you can help. Ideally, everybody goes up to Nevada or California and spends 6 months working on a campaign. I realize that most of us are not capable of doing that. But money in politics is incredibly important. And you got to ask yourself, how much is living in a democracy worth to me? Do I spend $100 on someone's campaign? Do I spend $250? Do I spend 1,000? I forget what the limit is because I've never actually been close to giving it, never been able to afford to be close to giving it, but it's in the thousands. So, and there's only about 25 seats that are really in play. The gerrymandering is severe, and I won't claim that it's all on the Republican side, but they're the ones who are like making an art form out of it. There's only like 25 seats that are really in play. So if those Democratic candidates have enough money, they have a very good chance of winning. So if you have any questions about which those races are, I subscribe to this thing called the Cook Political Report. They rate every race. They'll tell you which ones the Democrats are definitely going to win. They'll tell you the ones that the Republicans are definitely going to win, and they tell you the ones where your money makes a difference. So think about how much living in democracy works for you and consider donating. You can do it from Hawaii. You don't have to be from this state. The Senate is probably not in play. Of course, the Senate is done state by state, and only a third of them are up every session. But Trump's polling numbers are so bad right now. Yeah, you can clap for that. They're so bad right now. Well, I have to admit, I don't know. Probably, how many of you guys remember Eddie Murphy, the black stand-up comedian? So he told this joke years ago. There was this Ku Klux Klaner who ran for governor in Louisiana, and he got 9% of the African American vote. And Eddie Murphy was like, 9%? Who voted for him? What were they saying to themselves? Bring back the good old days? So I think that the numbers they're still appallingly high, but for political purposes, they're very, very good right now. And maybe the Senate is in play. If you decide that you prefer to donate to a Senate campaign, I can suggest something where we have a chance. So that's my pitch. There are two very important things going on right now. The more important one is at the federal level. But for those who are here and don't have tons of money to spend on campaigns, or even $50 to spend on campaigns, I understand. Show up at the legislature. Remember that we are impressed by the fanatical minority. So show up, and when you combine that with the fact that our positions are very popular in the state, that's an almost unbeatable combination. Mahalo, mahalo nui loa.
I think we're now going to have Q&A because we need to get the generous folks in Paris home. We're already running late, but we heard you at every Q&A. You want to know, what else can you do? Yes. This is the whole thing tonight. What else can you do? On our website, there's all kind of stuff. Particularly relevant today is the tab that says Elected Official Directory and the one that says Submit Testimonies. You've heard Senator Rose. You've heard everybody else. Get going. Do your work. Submit testimony means that you can't really submit anything until you first register for the legislative site. There are 3 people sitting out there waiting for you if you're not registered yet. There are wonderful tables over there. In the visible, J20 doesn't really get involved in electoral politics. They've got it all. They've got voter registration. They've got a wonderful webpage on their website about what bills they're tracking. Immigration or migrant rights is one of them. We will, tons of them. We won't list them all because we'll be here till 12. Pick your thing. There's daily updates. Sign up. Don't be lazy. They also have an incredible campaign called Replace Ed Case. Go there, get your goodies, get to work. You may be, oh, I'm so busy. Fascism is worse. All right, then, next. You folks probably already subscribe to us. If not, take a picture. Last but not least, my wonderful comrades of Oahu Rapid Response Coalition. They are there. Join us, get the hotline. They've told you ICE is here. We need eyes. We need eyes on every single block. We need people to join the resistance, sign up. The cards are there. There are Know Your Right cards everywhere. There are privacy signs. They'll talk to you about that. Am I missing? Oh, and is Liza and Mandy gone? No, they're still there. If you want to talk to them about those bills, they're there. You remember the 3 wonderful people outside who's going to register you on the legislative sites? Do your job, no questions, get to work.
Okay, before we all go, we have another forum to announce, because I'm sure that you've heard every expert on elections is warning us about 2026, right? Every single expert on elections in the United States is telling us that unless we are absolutely vigilant, including in the courts, including in legislators, but also on the street, to make sure that we get to vote, it may not happen. You all heard about the raid on Fulton County, Georgia, this week. So on February the 27th, YJ20 has another forum. It's called Vote. Our lives depend on it. And that includes not just voting, but making sure that we will vote in 2026. So we'll hear from experts talking about that. So please join us here, hopefully here at Harris again on February 27th, also a Friday. Thank you so much for coming out. If I could just leave you with one thought as a migration scholar, as an immigrant myself, stopping human migration is against nature. Humans move. People move. People move for good reasons. Stopping their freedom of movement is not only unnatural, it is unjust. People move because they need to move. We may need to move, so start thinking about that as well, and whether you want a border between you and safety. All right, so thank you very much. We'll see you next time.